I think what you need is the fire in your belly. That's what you need. You've got to be able to fight. You know, I thought I'd done enough to win. I thought I'd landed more punches and avoided punches. I thought I'd caught him. I can't hear what he's saying, and then didn't feel my arm get raised. Felt his arm get raised, and then I found out it beat me by a point.
Do you ever feel scared before you fight?
It's not what you expect. You expect, obviously, getting your arm raised and, oh, you've just done it, you've done this, you've done that. It's like when you get to that point that you've visualised for so long, I want to win that fight, I want to get paid that money. But it's just not what you think. And I had to go back, after winning world title, I had to go back for 3 weeks. I'd still got a big shiner here, face was still bruised. Pulled up, he's like, oh, you know, what you done with shiner, been scrapping? I went, no, I've been boxing. Like, he went, oh, what are you semi-pro like? I ripped the script up that night because I wasn't supposed to see it final bell. And that's when the change in fortune really came. You know, I got signed by Matchroom. I got a full-time sponsor, full-time boxer, living my dream. You know, it took me 11 years to get to it. But finally, I was living my dream.
For your winner by majority decision, and still the IBO lightweight champion of the world, Maximus Hughes.
So today we are joined by Maxi Hughes. Maxi, how you doing, mate?
All good, mate, yeah. You know, as we're in my home and I'm relaxed. So yeah, all good, mate, yeah.
Mate, obviously it's been a while trying to get you on the podcast. Been backwards and forwards in the DMs and stuff, but I know I did a shoot with you when was it? It was a few months ago, wasn't it?
I think it was, when was it now? January, February, I'm
January,
sure.
February,
Well, early this year, wasn't it?
That's right. Obviously a lot's changed since then. But I want to say first and foremost, mate, thank you for inviting us into your home.
Yeah, no problem, mate.
Beautiful place, mate. It's really appreciated. But I must say, by the way, the coffee's unreal. Is that from a machine?
Yeah, machine cost a fortune, like.
I'm
glad you like it.
I tell the boxing career's gone well, mate. Getting these.
Yeah,
mate, for obviously the people, again, like, I know it's a bit of a boring question, this one, but for the people who don't know exactly who you are in your boxing career, how did a lad from Doncaster become a professional boxer?
Yeah, I suppose started out as a rugby league player. That was my sport that I was doing. Then went to pre-season training and went to a boxing gym. And then that sparked my interest. So I was like, actually, I'm going to have a go at that. So quit rugby, straight into a boxing gym. You know, and that when I was 15 years old, so 18 years ago. But now we're here. You know, I had an amateur career, made it. I was good enough to turn pro, and you know, as a professional, 13 years now. You know, nearly end of this year. So next year, I'm into my 14th year as a professional.
It's unbelievable. What can you remember your first taste of boxing?
Yeah, that going into that gym, which is not too far from where we are now. It were going there with our rugby team, and obviously egos are bouncing around like, oh, come on, let's spar, let's have a go. And one of my mates, they were messing about sparring, and obviously we didn't know about the type of gloves, hand wraps, and they went to punch each other. They hit each other in hand, and my mate broke his hand. So that was one of my first memories of being in the boxing gym, is my mate breaking his hand.
What's happening, guys? I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. If you are, please hit that like, hit the subscribe button, and press the notification bell so you don't miss another episode. Do you feel like you had a natural ability for boxing, or do you feel like it was something that you had to work at?
I was told I had a bit of natural ability. I don't necessarily think it's something you need, is the natural ability. I think what you need is the fire in your belly, you know, to fight. You know, boxing, it's a beautiful sport, and you know, it's part of my life. But there's also, it's a fight. You gotta, you know, when kids are tested, that fight or flight mode, that's what you need. You've got to be able to fight.
Did you ever feel like you'd use your boxing on the streets outside of the gym? Did that ever happen to you?
No. There were nearly times at school where somebody would One in particular wanted to test it and that, but when I think when he realised I wasn't willing to back down, it got left at that. So yeah, I never got into it for that. I've had fights as a kid, but I've never gone looking for it.
Yeah,
I've always been that kid. I think that's why I was able to be a boxer, because I had that fight in my belly. Someone would push me, and then that fire kicks in. I remember being the first person in school to be sent off at rugby, and it was for smacking someone. But again, because I was following rules, a kid. Cause I've always been pretty smaller at school, obviously. A kid similar build to me come running at me with ball, and he must have thought I'm gonna run through this kid. But I produced, proper right good tackle, shoulder in, got him straight to the floor, and I made him knock on, and made him drop ball. And I don't think he liked it, because like with all my boxing career, I've been underestimated. I think he must have looked at me and gone, I'm gonna run straight through this kid. But again, he had a shock. He ran into my shoulder, I put him down, made him drop ball. So he got up and he pushed me, and like straight away that fire kicked in, and automatic reaction. Before I could really think and realise what had gone off, I'd smacked him. And what I didn't realise is it was our teacher and our coach that was the referee that game. And he just said to me, he just looked at me in disgust. He went, because obviously my real name's Danny, he went, Danny, red cat, get off the field. And I went sulking back to the changing rooms, and afterwards, because he played rugby himself, and he was a good guy actually, he said to me, he says, if you're ever going to do that, he says, for God's sake, don't do it in front of referee. He says, you were right in front of me when you did that. And I think that's a quality that is needed in boxing, that fight or flight. And, think instances like that from being a young'un, that's when I knew, I had it. And same when, it's always, in boxing, you always know if a kid is going to do all right if they've got that. Doesn't matter what talent they've got. If you can see that kid has got that fire, when they're put under pressure, when they're put in ring to spar, if that kid has got that fire, that willingness to fight, and the rest of it, the skill, technique, all can be taught.
Did your family support you in your boxing endeavours when you were a young age? Because obviously, again, it's a great discipline, definitely. And obviously, you can look at, you learn how to stick up for yourself and all that stuff. And you're staying off the streets, you're locked away in a gym. But obviously, there can be negative sides, obviously getting punched in the face and things like that as well. How was your family and sort of support network around you when you were sort of thinking, actually, do you know what? I've got a bit of an ability here for boxing. I'm working hard. I'm doing well at it. I'm enjoying it, first and foremost. But, I want to kind of pursue this. What was the support like around you?
Brilliant. I'm from a loving family. And at the time, my mum was a single parent to three of us. And she and it's only now I realise how hard she worked, but she supported me and my brother and sisters at the time. She was working 2 jobs. She was knackered all the time, night jobs and a day job, trying to grab sleep where she could. But she still made sure, like I did rugby, so she used to make sure I would get into rugby because I wanted to do that. So she supported me in that. My brother used to play football. He also had a go in brownies. My sister in scouts and dancing. And they both, all three of us did swimming lessons as a kid to learn to swim. So whatever I remember the day that I told my mum, it was the afternoon, so she'd finished the day job. She was trying to get an hour's sleep before going to work at night. And I went and woke her up. So I decided I'd been to this boxing gym with rugby team and go in and thought, I'm going to have a go at that. Because at the time she was working at Royal Mail sorting office in Doncaster Town Centre, and she said she was working with a youngish lad who used to box from Doncaster. So I was like, right, I said, oh, Mum, you said you know that kid who used to box, who you work with. I says, I want to have a go at boxing now. We've been doing it with rugby training, so I want to have a go at it. So she went, she would, all right, yeah, I'll sort it when I get up. And then, so when she'd gone to work, she spoke to this kid, James Lister, his name was. He had a certificate up in amateur gym wall where I ended up being amateur. So found name at gym and all that, and you know, everybody in family were just pleased that I would, you know, not. I think they were all pleased that I was doing it. Obviously, it's not nice to see somebody who's your family going into a sport where you're going to get punched, but you know, that I was doing something, you know, trying something. Everybody were pleased, like, and I think people were more surprised because I am a natural introvert. You know, something when I first went to school, what my mum had told, what the teacher had told my mum was, there's something wrong with your lad. He's very quiet. Don't want to interact with many people. There's only one person who is still my best mate today, who we met at nursery. He was the only person who I'd mess around with. So I think people were more surprised, like, you know, you're so quiet, you know. I didn't think you'd want, you know, I think you'd be the type of character that would want to fight.
Yeah. Do you think that fueled you a bit, like to prove them wrong a little bit? Like, yeah, I may be this introvert, but look, there's more about me than just this quiet kid in school. Yeah,
I think so. I think without realising that's sort of, you know, a big driving factor of me. Like even still to this day, when my last fight, Jorge Kambosas, massive name in boxing, the former undisputed lightweight world champion, held all the belts, and you know, I reached out and I got one. You know, once that fight were announced, like, oh, I remember reading a lot of comments, and my mates had saved a lot, like, you know, George is going to win this fight by murder. Maxi's done well, but he's well out of his depth. So I'm reading these and I'm feeling like I can't wait. I can't wait to show these people who I am and prove them wrong. And I think that's, you know, that's a big driving factor in me to show people, you know, I'm not what you think I am. You know, you think I'm quiet, introvert, I'm not going to excel at this, excel at that. I'll decide what I'm going to do, and I want to show you that I can do what you think I can't do.
Who did you look up to when you sort of starting out and stuff? When you said to your mum, you know, I'm going to give this a go and stuff, and she's like, I'll sort it in the morning with you. When you got into that gym and you actually thought, right, I'm going to make this, because that must have been a pivotal moment where you were like, look, I need to give this a go now.
Yeah.
Who were you looking up to at the time?
What, in terms of boxing?
In boxing, yeah.
Nobody really. I'd not followed it massively. So the only boxers I really knew of at that time were from 90s, Prince Naz. I knew he was from UK, not far from where I lived in Sheffield, not far from Donny. Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis, and the guy who Mike Tyson bit his ear, which at that time I wouldn't know his name, but you know, Van der Holyfield. It wasn't until I'd really got the bug for boxing where I started studying it, watching fights and all that. You know, it were hard for me because at the time, this were 2005, and where we lived, we didn't have very good internet. We were still on dial-up connection, which is proper slow. So, yeah, being able to watch some on, you know, obviously YouTube were in its early days. There were fights on there and stuff. So like having to find a Mike Tyson fight, for instance, click on it, wait 10 minutes for it to load, 4 seconds at fight, and then pause it there, and then wait. So it were hard. I had to watch, you know, wait for Friday. I think at the time it was Friday Fight Night, the Sky Sports show. So watching the currency, I remember watching a lot of David A when he was on his rise. David A, a lot of the undercard fighters. So just always, you know, obviously I were getting more and more addicted to boxing and loving it. So I was just watching it where I could. My mum bought some DVDs. Still got like a collection of all old school. So it were come home from school, watch that. Sometimes she'd treat me. I'd get boxing news. So read the boxing news magazines, and that was the way where I started studying it and seeing people. Even still to this day, you know, I've got a couple of favourites who I like to watch, and who like my go-to fighters to watch a certain fight of theirs. But I've just been inspired by, I suppose, all boxers. Any boxer that's particularly done well and done certain, you know, been involved in good fights. So, you know, still to this day, that's how, Even I watch let's watch a show on a Saturday. Watch all undercard. That somebody on undercard who's not had many fights, I might watch that and he might do something, and I'll go, that was brilliant. That I really enjoyed that particular move or that round. So getting it from every boxer.
I think when you're a student of the game, that's when your game really does sort of improve, doesn't it? I mean, for instance, with what I do, mate, I create content for people like yourself on social media, and when I first got into it, I remember doing it because I was thinking, right, I want to make some money, I want to start creating some content, I want to start actually building a business. But then when I actually started to love boxing and actually what that was all about and appreciated the art for what it was, then you start actually getting fascinated with what a boxer has to go through. It's not just what he's doing in the ring, it's what he's doing outside of the ring. Then I realised that my game was even better in terms of the content that I was producing because I understood
it's an
the
understanding
person.
Of it,
and I think that there's a lot to be said for that, because I feel like a lot of people, whichever kind of avenue or path they go down in life, they don't necessarily look at it from a student's perspective. They do it for the bells and whistles, the shiny objects, everything that comes with it.
Yeah.
And speaking of kind of shiny objects and kind of when your career started to develop, can you remember the day when you turned pro, and how did that feel like?
Yeah, so at the time, I'd had five years as an amateur, and I wrote my final year as an amateur. I was 20, and the ABAs, obviously, the ABAs have been around years and years, and my goal was to become ABA champion. I'd fought in ABAs every year since being an amateur, junior ABAs, then going into seniors, and hearing, like, obviously being a student of the game, then watching this Friday fight night, listening to commentators say, oh, Ian, up next on the bill is so-and-so, he was a two-time ABA champion. So the connection I made were, right, I need to win the ABAs to be able to be like this person who's boxing on telly and, everyone's watching him. So like, right, my goal as amateur is win an ABA title. That might get me a better deal and might be easier for me to turn pro if I've got an ABA title. So that were it. So I turned 20. ABAs were coming up. I thought, right, if I can win the senior ABA title now, I should be good enough to turn pro. And I got through to quarterfinals, and at that time, and I don't know how they score it, and I think they score it different now, but it used to be a computer scoring system, and between rounds, the judges get a little printout and they send it to your corner, and your corner would be able to read it and to see what score it is, to maybe adjust tactics of what you're doing. Yeah. So going into final round at this quarter final, I boxed Liam Taylor, actually, from Manchester, who's he's done all right. He's 4 foot, but I think he's mandatory again for a British title. So it was 3-3 going into the last round. So my trainer, he says, look, it's 3-3. Go out there and get job done. And then we're on to semis. So I'm like, right. And I thought I'd done enough in that round. Obviously, he got told similar. But, I thought I'd done enough to win. I thought I'd landed more punches and avoided punches. I thought I'd caught him. They're very specific in amateurs. Knuckle part of the glove on the scoring point of the head and body. And I thought, I've done that there. Surely this is mine. And then when the ring announcer got on microphone to announce the winner, I couldn't understand it with that right bad audio. So I can't hear what he's saying. And then didn't feel my arm get raised, felt his arm get raised, and then I found out it beat me by a point. They didn't give me a single point. So I'd scored 3 points going into the last round, and I didn't score a single point in the last round, even though I hit him.
Yeah.
And they only give him 1 point. I thought, and that were a real kicking bollocks, that one was, I've gutted, because I thought I'd done enough, and really, really set my heart on winning ABAs that year. So I was really deflated by that. I ended up having one more amateur fight. They just brought out the amateur belts that you see nowadays. They just brought them out. They've got a Yorkshire area. So my last amateur fight, I fought for that and I won that. So I'd got this belt. And then a couple of lads who had boxing amateurs, I'd seen that they'd turned pro. One particular lad, God rest his soul, he's just passed away last week, Chad Gaynor. I'd boxed him twice in amateurs, and he'd turned pro. He'd had 3 pros, and got friends with him on Facebook, so seeing he's doing well. Just got chatting with him, and I told him how interested I would be in turning professional, and he got his coach at the time, Jamie Kennedy, to give me a ring. He's like, oh, so you're interested in turning pro? I says, yeah, definitely. I said, do you think I'm good enough? And he was like, yeah, of course you are. So I was like, right. And he says, oh, come over to the gym, we'll do a few sessions, this and that. So that's when I was like, right, this is the real deal. I'm going to a professional gym. I'd not been to a pro gym before. Obviously I'd fought Chad twice and I'd beat him twice, but he'd had a few pro fights, so like I'm sparring a professional now, and that's how it turned, and then they said, do you definitely want to turn pro? We'll get you a meeting with a manager, lad who's managing Chad at minute, Chris Hatton, who's Tyrone Nurse's dad, and that's how it all started. Yeah, so it were a crazy time, what were 13 years ago.
A lot of people talk about the wins, and obviously a lot of people talk about the successes in boxing. But what I'm interested to know is kind of what is the downside? Like, what are the darker times like in boxing? Whether that's be when the match didn't go your way, or just things kind of which surround training and everything that goes into actually a camp or building up to a fight or whatever it may be. What type of demons are you facing when you're going through those times?
It's everything. Like, I was turning pro, being young and naive at 20, thinking, you presume, like you say, you fall into the trap of watching boxing on telly. You think because they're on telly, they're on absolute fortunes. They're all driving big cars and this and that. So you think, right, I'm professional now. It'll not be long before, I'm making loads of money. I'm going to get paid loads. And then finding out how much you actually get for your fights. So my first couple of fights, I think my purse were like £1,000 or 900 quid, and then I had to pay my trainer 10%, my manager 10%. So
mad that, innit?
And then I was like, oh, I'm hardly going to buy flash cars and that with this. So obviously I had to keep my job as being on building sites. So that was the goal. And thinking, right, when's time's going to change? And I suppose the demons are just around that, like, when am I going to get to that level up there where I start getting paid more? And because it would generally just hard, working on building sites, getting up early, especially through winter when it's cold and crap weather, then, you're making sure that your weight's right, you're eating right. I remember at that time I was eating this was my knowledge on nutrition. I just used to take a couple of oranges and a couple of tins of mackerel, and lads at work used to hate it because they stunk. So that was, and on them cold, horrible days where they were having nice bacon sandwiches and that, and I'm just eating out of a tin of mackerel, and that, obviously that's tough, and that's mentally tough. And then the selling tickets for the shows, knowing, selling 3,000 quid's worth of tickets and only getting 700 quid after it. You're like, how's this fair? How's this work? But that's the business of boxing, and that's what's really hard as somebody coming through. You don't really have a specific training camp either, because you fight pretty regular when you're young and coming through. So you've just got to always be fit, always be ready, always around your way, always working. So that one, tough. And there were times where I'd have fights and I wouldn't even get paid out, because what they used to say is, right, the first 12 to £1,500 of tickets you sell, that's your opponent's wage. The next maybe 500 quid is the promoter's. He needs that to cover cost of fight, to run the show, etc. Then anything after that, that's when you can get a wage out of it. Well, like, right. There were times where, because you get obviously the learning fights, the journeyman fights, your mates are like, when you're going to be in a rate, an hard fight, 50-50 fight. Well, I don't know. I get told who I'm fighting, and we'll come to watch when you're in it. Yeah. So losing ticket sales, you're like, you know, and this were early days. Social media had not really took off yet either as a self-promotional tool.
Mm-hmm.
So it were hard, you know, and that's makes it hard. Where, you know, a lot of kids will think it's too hard. It's just not worth it yet. I'm not getting out of it yet. Whereas, you know, I suppose I just thought, well, I've chose to do it, so I'll just do it. And that was, you know, very mentally tough. Not so much demons, but just actually, you know, mentally and physically tough.
Did you ever doubt yourself?
Yeah, big time. In them early days, I've obviously being a quiet kid and always been underestimated, never been expected to do well. I suppose early in my career, I got into believing that. You know, when I got when I'd worked my way up and got my opportunities to fight for titles against these undefeated kids who had been signed by Matchroom and that, almost, you know, believing, thinking, I'm not good enough to be here because people say I'm not good enough, I'm going to get beat. So, you know, believing that, and, you know, as a not at that time when I was younger, not being as confident in myself, I used to beat the early losses that I'd had were just down to me, not down to my ability, down to my own mindset, because I was not mentally strong enough.
So how do you learn to tackle that then, Maxi? Because obviously you've got people around you saying, I mean, you know you're the underdog yourself, and you've got people around you saying you're never going to make it, you're going to get beat by, you're going to get smoked by him and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
How do you combat that in your own head? Because at that point, you've got no proof that you are better than that guy.
Yeah.
So how do you actually think, no, not like I'm going to... Is it literally a fire of I'm going to have to prove it? Is that what it is that gets you through?
Yeah, or, you know, thinking... And as well, my own... Because I was fighting good kids and losing to good kids, you know, they're all gone on. And everyone who I'd lost to, have all been, at one point, British champion, European champion, and Liam Walsh, his only loss come against Gervonta Davis. So, no, I'd lost in good company. But the fire came, obviously, my team around me, my missus, my family are like, you are good enough. You know, you're only narrowly losing here. You are good enough. And I think I wanted to prove it to myself.
Yeah,
you know, to say, I don't want to retire an early man, nearly winning a belt, nearly winning this fight. I thought, I've got to, you know, my look's going to change at some point. You know, I am going to get that win or win that belt, whatever it is. So that's what kept me going. And, you know, and having a good team around me, you know, the team I've got now, Josh's dad, Sean O'Hagan, he's found a way of bringing the best out of me. And I think just experience in the sport of boxing and knowing what them pre-fight nerves are like, you know, being experienced now. So I think all of that and life experience, I suppose, getting older and wiser, has all played its part in me being able to tell myself I am good enough and I am going to go out there and perform and win.
Because obviously we're sitting in this unbelievable house and everything that you've got here is unbelievable, mate. We were just talking off camera, obviously, about the size of your garden. For the people who cannot see this, for the listeners, it's unbelievable. It's like a footy pitch, mate. Yeah. So again, congrats on the success and even what I've experienced being in your company here. And I know, obviously, as we said, it wasn't always like that.
Yeah.
When did you feel that actually shift? When did you start thinking, actually, money's coming in now, and start actually looking at those nice cars or whatever it may be?
Yeah.
You know, because every young lad's got the dreams of having the nice cars and the big houses and all that type of stuff. And when you realise, actually, this boxing game ain't that easy. Like, there's a long way to go before I can even sniff that stuff.
Yeah.
When did things for you start to kind of change financially, and how did you deal with that?
So it took me 10 years for that change in fortune. Obviously, the title shots I'd got was always decent money, and at that time, pretty life-changing. You know, it helped. The boxing money helped get our deposit for our first house and stuff like that. But it were in my mind, it were like, right, win this, and then the money goes up and up and up. But obviously, I lost, so I was back to the bottom of the pile. So once you know, it were lockdown. So I'd been a pro 10 years. It were middle of COVID. Nobody knew what were going off, and then the boxing had come back behind closed doors. But MTK was flying at that time, and they'd got a load of shows lined up, and one of their golden boys, John O'Carroll, needed a fight. He needed a keep busy fight, because he'd just come off beating Scott Quigg and he was waiting for a world title shot to come. So they wanted to keep him busy. They saw me as cannon fodder, thought he's been in with some good names, he's not quite got job done, so John will probably, get job done on him here. That was decent money. Obviously, it was a good opportunity to fight because nobody knew when sport or boxing were going, so obviously jumped at the chance to be back fighting. It was good money, and I thought, right, again, that same mindset, I go and get a job done here, I'll get paid that again, and then it'll just, life will just get easier, because I was still working at that time as well, so I was still on building sites, and obviously we were super confident of that fight, quietly confident, me and the team, and we went over there and got a job done. And that's when then MTK signed me, because it were a massive, I think I was a 12-1 underdog, which I was a bit mad at times. I thought, I know, I can understand John had been favourite, but me as a 12-1
12
underdog.
12-1's a bit shit, like, isn't it? If you don't know by now, I run a business called The Content PT. I create content for influencers, PTs, online coaches and fitness brands all around the world. So if you are someone who's in need for sexy content for your social media, or you really want to maintain a competitive edge in your industry, drop me a DM on Instagram.
And I thought, it's a 2-horse race here and you're just writing me off. But, again, I love proving them bookies wrong.
Exactly.
Idiots. So there, it got signed by MTK. 8 weeks after that fight, got opportunity to go to Dubai to fight an undefeated Kazakhstan who'd got the WBC International. I was underdog again, but because something clicked in me, finally getting that win over a good name in John O'Carroll. Like, right, I'm going over there, I'm going to beat this kid, give him his first loss. Went over there, beat him, got that payday again, and obviously winning that, all that, right, I've won that. At least the same's coming in again. So yeah, started gaining momentum and everything. Then my opportunity come to fight for the British title, and that has since turning pro. That was just the one belt that I always wanted. I we're never looking at WBC, all these world titles, thinking that's the one I want that. It was the British title for me because it's such. Especially in the UK, it's so prestigious and a beautiful belt, and the names that's won that in boxing history. So for me to win it and then get my name in them history books as a British champion, so got my opportunity. I had to take it on 4 weeks' notice because it was Liam Walsh actually who I'd fought previously. He'd got COVID and had to be out the fight, but they still wanted somebody to step in for that fight to happen. So I got the call 4 weeks notice. I was training, I was living the life, I was still working, but I was training, working hard because I'd got this momentum, and I thought, yeah, I'm having it, and this is my third time now fighting for this belt. There's no way on earth I'm losing this. This almost getting a bit superstitious, thinking third time lucky, it's third time. So I went in there, did an absolute number on that kid, and, I finally got that belt, the one that I wanted. I got another decent payday out of it. And then things went quiet for a few weeks, but I thought it's all right because I'm going to get paid for defending this whenever that is. But then my opportunity come then on a matchroom card to fight Giovanni Straffon, who just come over and won the IBO world title against James Tennyson, who at that time were just flattening everybody, and there were talk of him beating this Mexican Giovanni Straffon, then going and fighting Tank and being amongst them big names. But credit to Straffon, dangerous big puncher from Mexico, come over on 2 weeks' notice, I think. Come to the UK and rip the script up, and he knocked Tennyson out within a round. So with the momentum that I'd gained, the popularity that I would gain, Eddie had, because I'd boxed on a few Eddie Hearn shows, he'd seen the journey and he'd seen I was doing well, and he said I'd love to give Maxi an opportunity. So this Mexican had won this IBO world title, and he went, there you go. There's your opportunity. You get a good payday, but you want to be at this level, you've got to get through him. This dangerous Mexican who everyone were fearing, and I was like, right, well, it's my chance. It's the biggest payday I'll have ever had, and again, win this, boom, we're going up and we're going up. And that got that fight, got that opportunity. And I ripped the script up that night because I wasn't supposed to see it final bell. The talk was, we love Maxi, he's done very well, but he's well out of his depth here with this Mexican. And that's when the change in fortune really came. I got signed by Matchroom. I got a full-time sponsor. So I packed work in totally. I became a full-time boxer, living my dream. It took me 11 years to get to it. But finally, I was living my dream. And, and then things just started to snowball. I was in the run-ins for a Devin Haney fight, and then meantime I was defending my title. My money was going up and up, and last year we was in talks for Ryan Garcia. That didn't come off, but yeah. So just by that was the turning point for me. I've gone on a long way there to get there, but that was the turning point in my changing fortune. Was the John O'Carroll fight. I got nicknamed the Lockdown Lomachenko because, I had 3 fights behind closed doors while many lads didn't get any fights during COVID, and I got 3 and I won them all in good style.
It's an unbelievable story that, what it is? I think it's sweet of the fact that it took 11 years.
Yeah.
I know it might have been kind of frustrating or kind of disheartening at times when you think, when's my time going to come?
Yeah.
How did it compare actually living the life of, you're living out your dreams now, money's changed and everything, to actually what you thought it would be like? Was it as good as how you felt?
You often hear people say, they've just done, in all sports, you've won that race, you've won that event, whatever, and you often hear people, I've heard it loads, it's not sunk in yet. And I've thought about that because obviously I'm having them moments myself, thinking it's just, and how do I explain it? It's like I don't think it ever sinks in. I think that means how I've personally felt is it's not what you expect. You expect obviously getting your hand raised and you've just done it, you've done this, you've done that. It's like it's don't get me wrong. It's phenomenal, and when you get to that point that you've visualised for so long, I want to win that fight, I want to get paid that money. It's like you just think it's going to be, almost like walking out onto a white cloud and everything but it's just not what you think. And the saying, make sure you enjoy the journey. The journey's better than the destination.
Yeah,
I wouldn't necessarily say it's better than the destination, but I think what I've started to learn is to enjoy the journey, enjoy the little moments in training towards that end goal. Because I think that's what, for me, when people say, it's not sunk in yet, I think that translates to it's not what I expected.
I agree.
Feeling I've got now is not what I expected.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I think that's a thing that, because I've heard that a lot as well. And it's like, it's not sunk in yet. Even if it's a milestone, an achievement, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I feel like they're not present in that journey as well.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're waiting for that thing. And it's like, shit, I haven't become British champion, but
I've still got to go back to work.
And
like,
then
for me, I had to go back to work next week.
Fuck yeah, how mad's that? What was that when you won the British?
Even when I'd won the IBO title, I'd booked a week off work for the week after so I could rest and, celebrate. But just before I had to go back after winning world title, I had to go back for 3 weeks before I got this full-time sponsorship. So I remember I'd still got a big shiner here. Face was still bruised. Driving onto the building site, and there was a little gatehouse where you had to, sign in every day. Mm-hmm. So I'd got shiner, gate man, he didn't really watch boxing, like, so, and I remember putting it on my story, it gained some big momentum, like, so pulled up, he's like, what you done with shiner, been scrapping? Like, I went, no, I've been boxing, like, he went, what are you semi-pro, like? And I was like, I couldn't be bothered explaining, because by him saying that, clearly I thought, I've got a great job on my hands trying to explain what I've done and why I've gone and been on a Matchroom show, won that belt, and I'm still sat here in a work van in an IV.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You can't blame him though for wondering because you turned up to work and you just won that.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
It was an hard one to explain, so I just sort of, yeah, mate, yeah, you just laughed it off.
Did you notice that many people changed around you, Maxi, as you got more success? Did you get much jealousy? Did friends drop off? Because obviously you'll be getting known and you become familiar, you becoming, you know, people start to recognise you in the street or whatever it may be, especially in a town like this where, you know.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Yeah, like how did that impact you as well?
I just noticed I even had it other day. It's like not to your face. It's only when you get home. Obviously, the power of social media. I go to Wildlife Park every Monday, and you often get people like maybe looking twice at you, but I never think no of it because sometimes we all do it, don't we? Like,
yeah.
Oh, he looked like so and so, or what were he looking at, sort of thing. But I often get messages. Oh, was you at Wildlife Park today? Thought I saw you, and I'd say yeah, it was me. And say, oh yeah, sound. We're gonna ask for a picture, but it didn't come up. So I got that a lot, which for me, I see it as almost like a pat on back to say, you know, in boxing, which is the sport I've chosen from being a hobby to now a job, it's a pat on back to say I've done well enough,
be recognised
for somebody in the street to say, oh, I've seen you do your job really on telly.
Yeah.
So there's been that, you know, and nowadays with social media, obviously that's the biggest change is having to be open, you know, to being a professional athlete on your social media platforms. You've got to be open, and that's the difference. I hadn't noticed much jealousy, criticism. That it might be out there, but nobody's saying it to my face. Obviously, online you always get critics and armchair fans, but with time being involved in boxing, I've learnt to just take no notice.
Well, they normally say, don't they? People who are not doing as good as you, it's only them that are going to give you any shit. People above you or do, you know, they've reached higher things or achieved greater things than yourself. Yeah. They're never really going to say anything bad.
I listened to a great good quote. I don't read so well, so I do audio books, but I've done David Goggins' latest 2 books, which are brilliant. But after each chapter, the beauty of the audio, but he does like a little podcast about that chapter, and he's talking about haters. His haters. What he does is any hate and stuff he gets online, he prints it out and he reads it, you know, while or before training to psych himself up. But is the quote that I'll never forget it. It says, "You'll never meet a hater who's doing better than you."
Yeah,
I thought it's right because
it is. It's right,
especially online, Twitter's bad for it. It's why I don't really use it. But just anyone who's doing well, people just want to have a pop at them, don't they? Like someone who you might have gone to school with, they see you doing well with your podcasts and stuff, so they might just. They'll probably not show themselves on the profile. They'll hide behind a fake profile, but write something to you just because they see that you're doing well.
Mate, I've had loads of things on my journey where people have been, even I would class them as friends, and they've been a little bit. They've just changed.
Yeah.
But I remember speaking to one guy, and he said, "Ads, look, you've got to remember one thing." He said, "You're the one that's changed because you're hungry to succeed."
Yeah, you're trying to do something.
Yeah, and like you've got to remember that it's not them that's changed. They just see you changing, so they're going to act a certain way. So don't feel bad about them. That's their thing.
Yeah.
So that made me think, actually, do you know what? Like, I just want to do my thing, and I hope everybody else is happy. And I don't want to bother with anyone else. Like, I'm happy to just do my thing. With you, Maxi, obviously, all the success that you've had, mate. Like, have you got much recognition of people who you've looked up to? Is anyone who's tweeted you or give you an Instagram message, say well done, or I was watching you fighting you, or even when you fought and you've looked at them, the fucking hell, he's in the crowd, I can't believe he's coming to watch. Yeah. Like, is anyone like that where it's tucking you back a bit?
Like especially like again, taking no notice of the people who give you hate online, but the people within boxing, the people who I look up to and I respect, being able to like now, because I've been in boxing for so long, like people ask who are fans of boxing, who's most famous boxer you met, and do you get starstruck and that? I don't so much get so starstruck around boxers. Like I know a lot of top guys. Obviously I train with Josh Warrington.
Yeah, of course.
Look what he's achieved. I don't get stuck because he's just like me. We're just down to earth people, and majority of boxing people are like that. Although it was other day, I know I ended up nearly fighting him last year. Is Jorge Linares is obviously is at the end of his career now, but what a phenomenal fighter he's been, and it's people like him. He liked my photo. He obviously follows me on Insta now. He liked my photo the other day. And people like Ricky Hatton have liked photos, and getting to speak to them and getting recognition off them, shaking your hand saying, well done, you did that. I'm like, yeah, that's...
It's like the child in you again. You can get in
there.
Like buzzing for you.
And somebody who I do look up to is Aunt Middleton. Through boxing's been able to put me in touch with people like him, and it was through Josh who'd, we'd gone to one of his shows. We got to go backstage and meet him and just chat with him, like we're chatting, putting world to rights. And when you get sort of message off people like that who I look up to, for motivation, and listen to his podcasts, listen to his books, which give me that fire, to get a recognition of people like them. Like, that's it motivates you and inspires you more. So especially and people in boxing. Them big, especially guys who's, like I speak to every time I'll be at a show. If you bump into someone like Tony Bellew, he's obviously a good pundit. He was world champion, who's been there and done it and achieved it. And when people like that come up, shake your hand, you did well then, this, that, that's like, that's just what I need. That's all I need. Never mind what all these people who, online give you stick or critics and that. It's people like that and them type of conversations that just like they keep you spurred on.
They're the people
going.
that matter to you.
Yeah. Because I respect them and I look up to what they've achieved, and that's what I want to achieve. So when they say, you're doing the right thing, well done, keep it up, that's what you go, that's all I need.
I think this in person as well. I think there's something like, I remember saying to Matt when I met you on that last shoot, and I actually said, there's something about Maxi, like it's not even the box, and this is why I want to have a conversation with you. Like, you meet certain people, and regardless of what they do, what avenue they're in, or what they, what their thing is, regardless, it could be a joiner, no matter what it is. You meet certain people in life where you're like, there's something. It's like you can feel that fucking thing. I felt that and I felt like you were like that as well. Like, I don't know if it's the underdog thing, it's just your energy, something about you, and I feel like that's when you meet people like that, that there's like a no stop thing. Like, you're not going to stop. Which leads us to asking you, obviously, the fight with Kambosas, mate, obviously didn't get the result you wanted. However, what I do want to say is, I would argue that result, personally. But how do you feel mentally when you go through... I mean, it doesn't even have to be about that fight in particular. When something like that happens at this point in your career, and you know how good you are, and you know what result you maybe should have had, how do you mentally deal with that? How do you go to sleep at night? How does that, or is this something like, look, this is the game of boxing, sometimes we get the L, unfortunately, or sometimes things don't go our way, or whatever it may be? How do you deal with that?
So it were, what were it now? So it were ended a couple of months ago now, and I'm still, because I've not got news yet of an next fight, my attention is still a bit on that, and I have good days and bad days about it, and some days I have good hours and bad hours on it. There's some times where I think, you know what, they don't. When I've seen now potentially George is fighting Lomachenko in a big fight for the vacant belt, sometimes that hurts, and I think that should be me. That should be my face on that poster. Someone again who I've admired, Lomachenko, phenomenal fighter. So when I know it should have been my face on there, that can hurt. And other days it might spur me on more, thinking, right, you know what? Next time I get the opportunity like that, I'm making sure that the judges simply cannot even swing it the other way. Make sure I win so clearly, so decisively, that there's just zero argument, and I can use it as fuel. So even still now, and I think it'll probably be like that until I get confirmation of my next fight. I suppose what's made it easier is what, obviously, getting, as people say, your stock's gone up, which it has, because other than the judges that didn't give it me, and George's bravado after the fight, I won that fight, there's nobody else in the world, boxing world, that I've seen say, oh, Maxi, you did lose that fight, wake up, you did lose that fight. Nowhere. You know, nobody seemed to find them people yet, because I don't think there is any. So that it's bittersweet. You know, feeling like that, knowing that everyone sort of got me back, and the support I gained after that, the new fans that I gained after that. So still have good days and bad days. Some days I think, you know what, I'm done with boxing, because the typical saying when a decision like that happens, it's just boxing. Yeah. It's like we shouldn't accept that as an answer.
Yeah,
it's just boxing.
That's what I was going to say.
More needs to be done about it. Like, obviously, Josh's fight, slightly different ending, but again, controversial. The referee stopped it before us as a team and said we believed it should have been stopped. But again, you know, people say, it's just boxing, isn't it? It's like, we shouldn't accept that as an answer, because it's not right.
And the people are watching, they're not the boxers.
Yeah.
They're not the guy in that ring risking his life. They're not that guy. And ultimately, if you believe that it shouldn't have been stopped, or the fight should have went on, or like when we're talking about the Warrington, and you know, like if you look at something like that, you've got to think ultimately, like, hang on, you're right. It's not just boxing. There's actual fucking people involved. We shouldn't just accept it
and go, it's just boxing, because it's, you know, like on Josh's argument, they've took that away from him. The next round, if he'd have been given his minute at the end of the round, he could have gone out and stopped Lee Wood.
Yeah, exactly.
He'd have been a 3-time world champion, and onto a mega fight, maybe that American dream that he wanted. You know, and in my case, it should be me fighting Lomachenko in a fight that I've wanted and which is going to change my life. You know, and list goes on. You know, another big recent one with Jack Cattrall. You know, luckily now he's got a new contract and he's doing well. So, you know, but the list is endless, and I suppose it's not just in sport, it's in life general, where you know, life sometimes is very tough, isn't it?
Life sometimes fucks you, doesn't it? Basically.
Yeah, for all, not just sports, but in different jobs and in life, it's tough, isn't it? But I think if you're mentally strong and if you can't let it beat you and define you, go, right, you know what, it's going to make me more hungrier. You know, and like I said, when I said I had good days, bad days, the biggest feeling is it's driving me on. It's not put my fire out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's made it bigger, and it's made me more determined, and I think we all need a bit of that, don't we?
And I think, well, that's why I mentioned that fight, you know, with Kambosas there, because what I didn't want to do is dig too deep into that. I just want to touch on it briefly, because I think that ultimately, I know what I think about that fight. Yeah. I'm sure all the fans do, and again, the majority is going to side with you. That, you know, you watch it back and see that, but I feel like any young lad getting into boxing or getting into any kind of pursuit, if you like, that things are not always going to go your way, no matter how good you are. And we don't want to say it's just boxing or it's just life. Yeah. But unfortunately, you're just not going to always get the answers that you want. And I feel like a lot of good can become of that. And I'm pleased you said that. It hasn't put the fire out. If anything, it's did the opposite, because that's what we need. We need these people who are watching these podcasts. And I didn't want people to just listen to a podcast and go, that was a good podcast. I want people to go, no, actually, Maxi said that and that's fucking right. Like, I want
that's fired me. Like,
do you know what I mean? Like, and
I've read enough books of people who have inspired me, like the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Richard Branson, David Goggins.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, all these people, not just in sport, but in business, in all walks of life, that have succeeded.
Yeah.
You look at them all, they've all failed. They've all come crashing down. Successful people have not been born from money. Yeah. You know, it takes something deep inside, mental resilience. Like, obviously, we're getting into sort of a different era of human now, where people want success and they want it overnight. Like, people might look at my career, because I wasn't well known up until I had this big rise. They're like, oh, where's he come from? He's been an overnight success. It's like, no, it took me 10 years as a professional, plus my 5 years as an amateur, to get to that point. For me, that was my turning point. Some people's career, it might have took 7 years or 5 years.
They weren't seeing Jamie Lister from the post office.
Exactly,
They weren't seeing all that. Do you know what I mean?
Each person has that their own turning point, and somebody might be longer than mine. You know, it might took more than 15 years. But if you want something and you're willing to work for something, you know, you've got to stick it out. You can't just go, I've tried that for 6 months. It's not worked. It's never going to work. you've got to be willing to just keep going and keep going. And that's one thing that I've picked up in life, you know, as well as reading books of people and all the different people that I've met through boxing, in and out of boxing, and just generally in work, you know, people who's just got a business, it's successful now, but it hasn't always been like that. You know, like Steve's, like, as you know, he's a mega businessman now. But Jeff Bezos, you see the picture of him in that scruffy garage with spray painted Amazon, and you go, you know, people look at him now and go, oh yeah, I want to be like that. But you go, look where he started. Would
you want that?
Yeah. Are you willing to work like that for years before you get to that?
Without a pot to piss in as well. You've got to remember that. That's the thing as well. Like, and that's why, like, I often say, like, sometimes, even in my own business, the Content PT, sometimes I wish that I have days, mate, where I'm like, I wish I could just have a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
Because, like,
sometimes you think it's easier, don't you?
At 1 o'clock in the morning thinking about jobs? At 1 o'clock in the morning, are you on the DMs? Are you going through emails? Are you marketing? Are you bringing up a new proposal for a new client? Like, are you doing all these things? Or can you just shut your brain off? I'm not saying people in 9-to-5s have got it easy by any stretch of imagination, but in your own business, you don't know where your next pay is coming from.
No.
So there's no stop. There's never a stop. Like, I don't stop ever. There's never a stop.
Yeah.
And I feel like I need that support network around me to understand that. And if you don't understand that, then you can't be around us, because I can't deal with. Do you know? I can't deal with people who don't understand that. And I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I've did the 9-to-5. I've did the corporates. I've did all that type of stuff. And for me, this is my happy place. I want to be busy. I always, I like to think about things all the time. That's the way I am as a person.
Yeah.
You mentioned stocks going up. Francis Ngannou, his stock's gone right up, hasn't it?
Massively.
I want to ask you, Maxi, what do you think of the whole crossover boxing scene? Because there's two ways, and I was actually speaking to a guy who's he's a UFC fighter yesterday. I was with him yesterday, and we had a conversation about this, and he loves it. He thinks it's class, because obviously these young lads now watching their favourite YouTube, and they're going to the gym now, so there's all that positive. But I put it to him, I was playing devil's advocate in a way, and I was like, what about the lads, though, who's give their all to boxing, and they've never achieved anything financially? And there's lads who've trained for 6 weeks and done 50 grand.
Yeah.
What do you think of that, being a professional boxer?
So there's obviously different levels of crossover boxing. So Francis Ngannou, he can clearly fight from what he'd done in his fighting career. He gave his life, you know, I've looked into a bit of his story before this fight, you know, from Cameroon, didn't have a pot to piss in, took himself to Paris, got signed, worked his way up, you know, became heavyweight champion, you know, by dedicating himself. So, you know, fair play to him. I didn't expect the fight to go as well on his side, but fair play to him. You know, and what I've learned is professional boxing at higher level, top level, is more about business and about money. For the promoters, obviously the fighters will get paid well, but the biggest winners are the promoters, and the like the misfits. That does, you know, I don't begrudge anybody getting into boxing and trying to better themselves and having a go at it, but what gets me is the extremes they're going to now to get views, you know, disrespecting people's families, saying some nasty stuff, it being like a circus, you know. And
could you argue though and say that's just build up for the fight? Because it happens in professional boxing as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, yeah. And
I'm just being devil's advocate.
It's an hard one, and it does wind me up when you see, especially when you see money they're earning.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously their argument to the professionals is, well, you need to be more of a character. You need to do this because the world has changed now. The world of promotion has changed. It's about getting views, and that's what's going to draw you money. But I've always said, remember early on, people have like, oh, you know, be a bit of a character in boxing, you know, and you get paid more, whatever. But I've always said, maybe just because of where I've come from, the kind of place that I'm from, I've always said I'll always be true to myself. I'm not a very good liar.
Yeah.
So I'll never
Be someone
try
you're
and be
not.
someone who I'm not. I couldn't put an act on.
Yeah,
You know,
of
and
course.
some fair play to some people who do. You know, some boxers who's done it and they've made a career and whatnot. But
So would you not take the opportunity if
I feel like
if a misfits fight come up now?
I feel like now I need to get with times. Like we spoke before, like I'm gonna start a YouTube channel on tips. So maybe I should start acting like a bit of a clown. So my real professional career ends, but then my misfits career starts, and I might earn that big buck. So maybe I sometimes think, I question myself, am I being too old school about it? Should have been more open minded, but it's what I think the real bugbear is. Like myself and many others who've give our life and sacrifice to this to get where we are. For me, what the annoying bit is, the general fans and people think, oh yeah, I could be a boxer because Jake Paul or so-and-so, they've gone in it and they're pro boxers. It's like, yeah, but now I'm quite glad, I think, that DAZN have given it its own series, its own league, if you like.
Yeah.
So they're not
keep it separate.
They're not in with us, so people don't think, oh, he's a boxer, he's like you. It's like, no, they're in their own league. They've got their own thing.
When someone like Tyson Fury's on a bill like that, right, and fighting with Ngannou, does that bother you in terms of how it may look on boxing? Because how did you think he performed in that fight, Fury?
I was talking about this yesterday. And maybe Ngannou's not getting enough credit because obviously Fury wasn't able to do what he normally does, which is like an example. It's like hard to explain, but for instance, the footwork, Ngannou's stance might have been that awkward that Fury couldn't do what he normally does to people like Wilder, Chisora, who've got different footwork.
Yeah.
So, you know, that we might need to give Ngannou some more credit. Or do we look to the other side? Has Fury massively underestimated this, thinking, this kid's not good enough to be in my league? I just can... He might have physically prepared, put himself through it, but mentally, which is what your main need, is thinking, he's not in my league, this kid. I just need to turn up and what I do will be good enough, rather than thinking, he could come with this, he could come with that.
Do you think that's the approach he's took?
I don't know, Again, talking about yesterday, I think that's what's been a tale. It's either we need to give Ngannou more credit or Fury's underestimating him. And I was thinking about the other, what people, the general people might say is, well, MMA fighters can beat pro boxers at boxing. It's like you look at we've got two examples here. You've got when Mayweather fought McGregor. Like, I'd say my argument would say is I feel like Ngannou is a better boxer than McGregor, and Mayweather is better than Fury. Mm-hmm. So that's why Mayweather made it look easy. When people might say, oh, well, Tyson Fury is heavyweight king. He struggled against an MMA fighter, so that means all MMA fighters are finger. So, well, look at that one. Look how easy Mayweather.
It's fight specific, isn't it?
Yeah,
really,
and people specific, fighter specific in it. So, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. That.
Do you ever feel scared before you fight? Just a question I kind of want to.
Never scared. There's obviously there's the risk. There's always the risk. But when you break it down, as in the example is, could walk out here to go and pick me and I could step out and could get run over. So if I was scared about fighting, I feel like I should be scared about the risks of getting hit by a car.
Yeah, but you're actually putting yourself into the face of someone on purpose. Do you ever? Does that ever think, shit, like I could get done here? Like, do you ever? Not that obviously you've got a winner's mindset, Maxi. Clearly, you're the underdog and you've went on to do what you've done. But do you ever? I'm not saying do you think you're going to lose. Do you ever feel like fucking hell, I could really a couple of dodgy blows here and that could be it for me?
No, I don't allow myself to think like that. I don't think like that. Not that I think about it and I try and put it out of my mind. I just don't. I feel like as I've been involved in boxing that long, it just don't really enter my mind.
Yeah, of course.
And obviously I have my brain scans every year, which have all been really good. No changes. My eyesight's really good, and physically I feel And, you know, I've been with my now wife since I started boxing. So I feel like she'd notice any changes, you know, if my health were deteriorating, my speech, my memory, anything like that. So I feel like if there's any sign and she picked up on it, no, that's when I would maybe go. Or example, if I had a change in my brain scan. So you've had something's changed in your brain here, this has happened, and it's, you know, it's through taking punches. I would maybe look at it then and go, you know, with 2 kids now, being professional so long, maybe it's, in case it gets worse or in case fight, then maybe I will look at it. But up until now, no, I get my usual pre-fight nerves, which everybody says they get, which everybody gets. Anybody that says, I don't get nervous before a fight, they're telling lies, because you're going in there to fight. You need them nerves. They put you on edge. They make you sharper. So I don't get scared, no.
Where's Maxi Hughes going? What's the future looking like for you, mate?
Continue up to the top, you know. After that controversial defeat, luckily the IBF have done the right thing and moved me up the rankings. Should be any day now that they'll be ordering me into a final eliminator. So
where are you in the rankings? Top 5, did you say?
Number 5, yeah,
Number
with
5.
IBF.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm ranked with WBC in number 11, and I think the WBO. But obviously I'm pursuing the IBF because I'm highest and should be ordered for a final eliminator. So I'm going to pursue that. You know, the fire in my belly is roaring, so I'm going to pursue that and not stop till I get that IBF title.
And let's get that YouTube started for you, mate.
Yes.
It needs to be done.
Yeah.
Maxi, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show, mate. It's really appreciated. Honestly, it's been...
Pleasure.
Honestly, I can't thank you enough, mate. Cheers. Thank you for that, mate.
No problem, mate.
Cheers, bud.